Hello everybody. So my final project was on the behavior support system of PBIS for my behavior management class. What is PBIS? PBIS is positive behavioral interventions and supports. It's an evidence-based 3-tiered framework to improve and integrate all of the data systems practices affecting student outcomes every day, according to PBIS.org. It stands for Positive Behavior Interventions and Support. It could look like numerous things in the classroom, but the primary focus is on positive reinforcement to encourage target behaviors rather than negative reinforcements or punishments. The support aspect of positive behavior intervention and support is in 3 different tiers of support that might be needed among students with different needs in a classroom. PBIS is designed for everybody at the school. It can work in one classroom, it can work in a whole school. There are many schools that have adopted the PBIS support system. It's super effective for most students, but there's always going to be those couple of students that might not really buy into it. However, they typically will still at least have a role within this system. It is very accessible to numerous different students. The supports range in 3 tiers or levels that include supports for most students, then specify further and further to higher support needs with less students in that top tier 3 group. Our first support level is our level 1 supports. So our tier 1 supports, or level 1 supports, are in place to support most students. So these are what are used in the classroom on a regular basis. So this could include stuff like having classroom expectations and maybe classroom reward systems based on target behaviors. And about 80% of students aren't going to need anything beyond this tier 1 support. And it's really in place to help foster a positive, encouraging learning environment among the classroom, among the school, and everybody within that. So staff, students, everything. It's really designed to reduce the behavior problems, to increase that instructional time, and really focus on their positive behaviors and less on the severe interventions in this tier. There are interventions, but they don't necessarily have to be as severe, as the behaviors are more general behaviors and what is expected among all students. So then we move on to focus in on our level 2 supports, or tier 2 supports. These are available for about 15% of students who need more than that tier 1 support, but might not need as much as our final tier. So that's, about 15% of students. They're available for those students who struggle with those tier 1 supports and interventions and just need a little bit more attention on that. It is still using positive reinforcements, but it might be a little bit more individualized. There's group supports for some students, especially those who are demonstrating at-risk behaviors. And it's really in place to prevent the worsening of those at-risk behaviors. Finally, we have our level 3 support levels, which is our tier 3 supports. It's typically for less than 5% of students, and it's just for those students who did not do as well with the tier 1 and tier 2 supports and just need that little extra bit of support in order to really have the same opportunities and be as successful with the target behaviors in the classroom as their classmates. So this could look like specialized interventions for those who exhibit high-risk behaviors, This could come across in individual support plans, in behavior or academics, and oftentimes working with special education professionals, school psychologists. In the formation of this plan, maybe working with, if it is relevant, a disability support personnel on that ISP. It's really designed to reduce the severity of ongoing problem behaviors or ongoing high-risk behaviors, and really aiming to reduce those situations to a point where they will be successful in the classroom interacting with their peers. So, positive behavior interventions. What exactly does that mean? So, first, there's really a focus on a positive school-wide social culture. So this is not necessarily about academics. It definitely helps academics, but it's really a focus on ensuring that there's a positive learning environment. Also, it outlines the expectations of the classroom. It's very explicit in what the expectations are, and it's taught in an explicit manner, not just through implicit teaching. So, rather than expecting your students to do something, but not necessarily explicitly saying that, really explicitly going through each expectation very, very specifically. This can be super helpful for students who are more literal, students who might have ADHD, or your autistic students who, social cues might not register for them. So they don't realize what they're doing is wrong because they have not been explicitly told what their expectations are. Finally, it is all about that positive reinforcement to create that positive atmosphere. So positive reinforcement for positive behavior in order to encourage those target behaviors. This could include token reward systems, if it's, even just sticker charts, anything like that, making sure that you are giving those rewards and not taking them away for negative behaviors, only adding those rewards for the positive behaviors, because otherwise it turns into a negative reinforcement system as well. And PBIS is all about those positive reinforcements and those positive interventions. So these are super common among schools, being a school-wide system, and there are a lot of schools in the area that have adopted PBIS or parts of PBIS. The positive reinforcement versus bribery argument tends to come up quite a bit. PBIS is not a bribery system. Positive reinforcement is not synonymous with bribery at all. There is a fine line, and knowing how to walk that might take practice. Positive reinforcement is rewarding students for positive behavior after the behavior occurs, whereas bribery would be more before the behavior occurs. If you do this, then you get this. Trying to regain control of a situation that you already do not necessarily have control over. It gives a lot of control of a situation over to students, but not necessarily in a positive sense. So you could end up trying to negotiate with your students how much of something they get for a target behavior, and bribery does not allow for that clear expectation to already be set. So with positive reinforcement, there's an already established reward for target behavior, and it is not up for negotiation in the moment. If students decide that they would like to change that, it can be discussed at a time in which it is not being used, so that it is not as emotion-filled as the bribery might be in the moment. So overall, this system can really help students with their overall well-being at school. Using PBIS decreases the amount of negative feedback students receive. The more times a student hears no and stop and all of the negatives in a day, the harder it is to really be positive about school and about themselves. Students are also able to express themselves and their feelings without fear of punishments, as the expectations are set rather than rules based on what is a focus in the classroom. PBIS really encourages the emotional regulation rather than emotional suppression, and that's a huge part of what those supports are in place for. So it gives those students the supports that they need in order to be able to work on that emotional regulation and be able to process those feelings, as well as just giving the kids the opportunity to be successful in school. There are a lot of students who struggle to be successful in school, not because of the academics necessarily, but because they just aren't getting the support they need behaviorally and socially. This also affects the teacher and staff well-being hugely. PBIS can really help to frame a teacher's mindset into a more positive mindset. You're constantly looking for the positive things that your students are doing rather than anything and everything that could be going wrong in the classroom. It can also really help to connect with the students because you really get to know your students and what they might want, what they enjoy, how they best learn, and what their needs are in order to be able to support them in the best way that you can. It breaks down what students need, and teachers are able to focus in on what can be done themselves in the classroom, as well as what can be done with external support. So that Tier 1 supports, those are definitely possible in the classroom as a single teacher, but it gives a system for teachers to ask for that external support for their Tier 2 and Tier 3 students who need it, that teachers might not be able to give all the time in small groups or individualized settings, as there are so many other students in the classroom. It also really affects students' well-being academically, as they're in a more positive learning environment. They're getting those supports that they need. They have the opportunities to maybe work with other adults that they might need to work with to have that one-on-one or small group attention on their behavior, which in turn helps them to be able to actually focus in on the academics. So they're having that support to really work with other people and be able to function in the classroom when academics are being taught in a calm and peaceful, happy manner. And these are my references. I used the Center on PBS and What is PBS, which is a blog based on the Center on PBS website. Thank you very much.